We're joined now by Conservative MP Tobias Ellwood, former chair of the Defence Select Committee. Good afternoon, Tobias. Thanks for joining us. I mean, a first straight question to you. Where do you stand on this march planned for Saturday, Armistice Day? Should the protesters be allowed to march down past the 7.5 in Whitehall?
No, not at all. This is a very special day for the United Kingdom, and anybody familiar with our history and what we do recognises that this is the moment that the nation pauses to reflect on past service, on past sacrifice, and therefore those who have served to defend our way of life, our freedoms, and indeed the right to demonstrate as well. But the right to demonstrate comes with a sense of responsibility as well, to try to overshadow the nation when it comes together in every corner of the country, every village, every town, every city, and indeed the capital city as well, really is to show disrespect and indeed, as the Prime Minister says, is an act of provocation. And I really do invite the organisers to recognise how disrespectful this is, how it actually takes away from their own agenda as well. They may believe that somehow that a demonstration can take place peacefully, necessarily away from Westminster, but 10,000 people, they can't control everybody that's there. And as you were touching on a little bit earlier, there are elements inside those numbers that will deliberately be designed to ratchet things up, to move things into a more violent space. So there is time before the weekend to reconsider and reflect on just how important this weekend is to the British people, to listen, not just to the politicians and so forth, but indeed to those in the veterans community, and indeed, I think, to most Britons, to say, please, let's respect our weekend. By all means, do your demonstrations, but keep the two separate.
You alluded to there, I think, the intelligence report suggesting that certainly Tehran has a hand in some of these demonstrations, infiltrating at the very least with radical activists. Do you worry that there is a fifth column now in the UK who essentially could up the risk of terrorism in this country, that might increasingly use these sorts of events to create danger on our streets? And is this putting any pressure on the government?
Oh, absolutely. What we're seeing in the Middle East, I'm afraid, with this conflict, is stoking radicalization, whether it be individuals or indeed quieter cells as well. One good thing is that we have some most exceptional agencies, intelligence capability in the world to be able to understand what's going on. But they can't prevent absolutely any attack from taking place. But on a more general level, as you were implying, there are those that are funded by Iran that want to sow disinformation, that want to stoke up tensions, and will take advantage of what could very well be well-intentioned demonstrations, but the scale of which would be very, very difficult to control. And that's why from the Prime Minister and from downwards, people are saying, let's actually keep this weekend separated from those demonstrations.
I've been caught up in a couple of these protests in London, not this Saturday just gone, but the previous two Saturdays. I wasn't really attending the demonstrations. I just got sort of wrapped up in them, found myself in the middle of them. And there's a very strange dynamic to them. Obviously, it's very pro-Palestine. And very anti-Israel, profoundly anti-Israel, but also there's an anti-British element to them as well. And these are British people walking the streets of Britain, denouncing Britain. There's something strange about these marches. They need to be policed properly, at the very least, if they do go ahead. And what is disconcerting me more and more, Tobias, is every weekend we see these escalating protests. And every weekend you get Sir Mark Rowley and other police chiefs saying, well, we need more clarification under the law. Why would a police force need clarification under the law to police a big crowd? This is supposed to be their expertise. Can they not just get in there and start policing these demonstrations properly? Because frankly, this weekend, there were hundreds of thousands of people marching in various cities across the country. The police made a total of 29 arrests. I don't want trouble, but 29 arrests is a suspiciously low number, I would suspect, by a police force that is just trying to stand back and frankly not do its job, which is to uphold the law.
You see how other countries are responding to the scale of these demonstrations, which are taking place across the world, but including Europe. And we have become a very tolerant nation, and that's obviously a very good thing. But we've also lost sight of what we then need to do when people take advantage of that, when they step over the mark. I'm pleased to see that my friend Tom Tugendhat, the security minister, I understand he's written to the Met Police, he's written to the Mayor of London, and indeed to Westminster Council to request that they prevent any of the licensing given to these protests from taking place on the weekend. But you touch on something so important, which is what do we stand for? What do we believe in? What are we willing to defend? And I know that there'll be conversations taking place in the Home Office and indeed in Number 10 in the next coming days to make sure that the police are 100% understanding of what they should be doing to make sure that our streets are safe this weekend. And if it's determined that these demonstrations shouldn't take place, then it's the police's operational duty to make sure that they don't.
And what do we stand for geopolitically is another question on a lot of people's lips. It seems that Rishi Sunak very much moving towards the idea of humanitarian pauses. I think a lot of us out there are quite unclear on what that means, whether these are localised pauses in fighting to enable aid to get in or some sort of minuscule ceasefire. Do you think that we're having enough clarity from the top? We saw the German Vice-Chancellor record a message directly saying to his people where Germany stood and what he expected of his citizens, but there doesn't seem to be the same sort of leadership in this country?
No, I think there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes, I would say. I was the former Middle East minister, and I know James Cleverly been working very closely with our American allies. Antony Blinken has been in the region as well. You invite me to say something which I know may not be so popular, but I say this from a military perspective alone, through the lens of purely the kinetic response that Israel has shown here. It's absolutely our right and our position to stand with Israel. But that does not mean that we stand by when we see the unwise utility of force. And I don't know where Israel wants to go with its military operation at the moment. I don't know where this takes us into the future governance, the future security, and the future humanitarian responsibility for Gaza. And that requires more than just Israel. That's an international effort as well. So I do hope that there will be a humanitarian pause, as the Prime Minister and indeed the President of the United States have called for, but also an opportunity for us to reflect and regroup and to recognize absolutely Hamas should be destroyed, and that will require some form of hard power. But there needs to be consideration as to what happens next. The Palestinians living in Gaza needs to know that there's something to replace Hamas. And unless that's clear, then I'm afraid that Hamas will be able to recruit from within as the humanitarian situation begins to escalate.
Thank you, Tobias Ellwood.